Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. We have the full crew with us today, which is good. We have all kinds of things to talk about: spring practice and recruiting and the transfer portal and the craziness that is college football these days, where superstar quarterbacks or, well, big name quarterbacks just kind of quit in the middle of spring practice and demand twice the money.
How
We'll talk
about my
about that a
money?
little bit. And then we're going to talk about some comments that Chad Bowden made the other day on an interview that I found to be very interesting. So we're going to walk through all of that. Let's start, guys, with I guess the most important thing going on. Actually, I don't know if it's the most important thing. All those things are important, but let's start with spring practice. Another week down. Another week where we didn't get to see it, but we hear things. What is it that we learned this week in spring practice? Did we learn anything? I hope so. This segment will be terrible if we didn't. Mark, you're ready to talk. Go ahead.
So look, Eric will have his insight. I've got my own. I'm getting some feedback from people who are associated with the program that at least this past Saturday, I don't know if we want to call it a scrimmage, but they were at the Coliseum, so they had some scrimmage-like situations. Uh, Defensive line had a really, really good day. Offensive line didn't have a really good day. So I don't know if we want to take that as a positive or a negative, or it is what it is. But the defense seems to be really ahead of schedule right now. And I'm going to take that as a positive. But again, you're hoping that it was just an off day for the O line based on what I heard. Um, we'll see. Again, it's secondhand feedback coming from people who are close with the program, giving their opinion. So without us being able to see it, that's what we have to kind of relay.
Yeah.
Look, the
Well,
defensive line being dominant and having the edge, that has to happen in the spring. If you came out of spring and go and say, "Oh, the offensive line went punch for punch with the defensive line and they're right there." What's going on with the defensive line then? I mean, I get it. You don't want your offensive line to get run over, and you don't want to go into fall thinking, "Man, we don't have any answers on the offensive line." But if we've been talking all offseason about the investment made in the defensive line and what those guys look like and how you can just roll guy after guy after guy at them, you needed the defensive line to come out and own spring ball. I mean, own it. You need to come away from spring ball saying that side of the ball, and especially up front, has the chance to be dominant. And we know the offensive line, right? You got questions, you got young guys trying to make jumps, you got position battles. If we came out of spring ball saying, "Oh, they went 50-50. Those two sides really match up well together." That's not good. That's not good for where the how this team is built right now and what we expected on the defensive line. So I'm taking that as pure positivity on there. Now, should the offensive line accept that? No. No. Like you can't just kind of cruise through and say, "Well, they're good and they beat us." But yeah, that's what you needed to hear, I think, with the way this roster is constructed, with the amount of resources they put in on that defensive line. Those guys need to be a problem this spring, and it definitely does sound like that's happening.
I agree with all that. I'd add to it that usually the defensive line is ahead of the offensive line early on, that both in spring practice and in camp. Because I could grab three defensive linemen from different teams in the NFL, throw them on the field, and immediately they would all be able to do what they do. If you did that with offensive line, it's just not the case. They have to learn to work together, and so it's different. Greg Katz, you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's all about credibility. Uh, I coached long enough myself to know that you really are not quite sure how good you are on either side of the ball because you're playing against each other. Yeah, the defensive line, are they good because you want them to be good? There's always that problem. We're told they're really good. All the glowing remarks, but isn't that what spring tends to bring out? We're looking good here. We're looking good there. I still have a lot of concerns about the offensive line, only because of the history of it. Now, that's not to say in the near future it's not going to get more productive, but it still has to do with talent. And I think they're doing a really nice job of getting high school recruits that I've been following to commit to USC. I got a feeling they're going to be able to keep those commits. But in the end, we're not talking about 2 or 3 years from now. We're talking about this coming 2025 season. So, it's hard that's why looking at practice is so important for media, so that we can not sit there and rely on a second or third source that may be a very good source. But the truth of the matter is, I've been around long enough around the block to know that even some people that I respect and I liked, I didn't agree with what they were seeing, with what I was seeing, and sometimes I would get myself in a position where, you're not talking good about the program. No, I'm talking about the reality of what I see. Now, it may turn out in the fall that the defensive line is going to be good. I don't know if we're going to find that out in the early part of the season, and I don't know if we're going to find out the offensive line is really good in the early part of the season by nature of the schedule. So you kind of just have to go with what you're hearing, but I don't place 100% credibility on what other people think. It's more important to me. You can call it egotistical if you want. It's what I think, and until I really get a chance to get my eyes on it, I'm gonna hope that all the positive comments are going to be true. The player I'm looking at, to be honest with you, is what happens at right offensive tackle with Tobias Raymond and what their plans are in bringing people around. And I don't even know if we're even going to see a real good depth chart at the end of spring ball without a bunch of words called OR, or. So it looks like everything is equal. So we'll see. We'll see. So I'm going to hold my reservations about it.
Yeah, that's wise, I suspect, because you never do know in spring. Although we're going to talk about some things that Chad Bowden had to say probably near the end, and that should open up some interesting conversation. Look, Tobias Raymond, Lincoln Riley talked about him in glowing terms this week. Tobias Raymond's going to start on that offensive line. I don't know if it's going to be right guard or if it's going to, I don't know if it's going to be right tackle or if he's going to be at the guard somewhere. But Lincoln Riley was pretty clear. He's one of our 5 best offensive linemen and talked about him having made huge strides. Who else is going to be starting at those spots? I guess we don't know.
I think we do.
Well,
I think we're down to really one position that they're trying to get sorted out right now.
Left guard?
Yeah. I mean, Elijah Page is your left tackle. Alani Noah is going to be your right guard. By all accounts, it sounds like Tobias is going to be your right tackle. John Ray Reed is probably going to be able to hold off Keelan O'Connor at center. So we're down to one spot that they're trying to figure out. It's a matter
the interest.
Who's going to be number 6, 7, and 8 in that rotation is really the question mark.
I think that's fair. I suppose there is at least a possibility that somebody else will slide in at right tackle and that Tobias Raymond may find himself at left guard.
And I think that's the interesting thing, right? You have to weigh. So if Tobias Raymond is your better right tackle than Justin Tanu, but it's a drop at left guard, and so now if Raymond is a better left guard and you're okay with the drop at right tackle, like that's sort of the balance I think that you need to find. I don't know if Justin is an answer at left guard the way potentially Tobias Raymond could be an answer there. And so in getting your 5, what does that do? I think right, DJ Wingfield, he's new here. This is spring. He's got the off season, the summer, all of that stuff to kind of keep coming along. And so I do think if you come out of spring, even if you say, look, we got 6, we got 6 and we can pick from the 6 however it works out. I don't think that's a bad spot to be in if you're the offensive line.
Well, it's also the case that as Greg mentioned, they've done a pretty good job recruiting high school offensive linemen. Well, some of those guys are now in year 3, or they will become fall, right? I mean, you have a group of offensive linemen that now been there for a few years. By the time these guys get to year 3, they should be physically developed enough that they're ready to play. And that's certainly going to be true with Elijah Page and Alani Noah. But I think Tobias Raymond may very well be in that position also. That he is now. He was a talented project. He's been there 3 years. They don't talk about him as a project anymore. I think he's probably ready to go. I don't know if Justin is as physically developed as they would want him to be as a starter right now. And we'll talk about the transfer portal in a bit, but somebody's supposed to be showing up on campus who used to play left tackle. If he comes to USC, he's not playing left tackle, but I don't know if he's going to be a right tackle or if he's going to be a guard or if he's going to be at Iowa, but apparently he's showing up. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other thing that Lincoln Riley talked about that I think it was this past week is the running back room, and he was effusive in his praise. Essentially said, "This is the best running back room that we've had since I've been here," and I don't know that that's a huge surprise. I think everybody who follows USC was and is excited about Brian Jackson. You bring in the best JUCO back in the country, and the praise for him has been consistent. You have a speedster in Eli Sanders who you think you can mix in and do some other things with. So I guess it's not a surprise that they like the running back room. But yeah, I mean, Lincoln Riley seems to be very excited about what he has there.
Yeah, they haven't had 3 before.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't had 3 at the same time. Like there was the third one was always like, if he has to play, then he can play. The third one right now, if the third one's Brian Jackson, which I don't know, if the third one's Eli Sanders, maybe it's either one of them, but the third guy is kind of 1B at this point. It feels like. So yeah, I think you can do a lot with that room. It gives you a lot of different things.
I'll tell you what you're likely to get. Sanders is a guy that I'm sure they're going to try to find a way to get in space. But the other two, what you're going to get is a physical running game, I would suspect. I mean, these are not guys who are going to dance around. These are guys who are going to run downhill, run through arm tackles, and batter you. And that's probably exactly what Lincoln Riley was hoping to develop in the Big Ten. Well, that's sort of how you're supposed to play in this conference, right? Greg, isn't that what the Big Ten is all about? Physical backs just pounding it off tackle?
Well, I think the really good teams, that's what it's all about. They're just, sometimes you get caught up on, does he have a 5th gear? Does he have, the wiggle room? All those are good traits, obviously. But in the end of the Big Ten, you better have some freaking studs coming through that line that can really hammer away. And if you don't, you got a big problem on defense. And I'm sure the hope is the SC defensive line, when they play against the elite teams in the Big Ten, can hold their own, because I can guarantee you the running backs will be studly. Now, the bigger question to me is, okay, Lincoln, you say you've got these great running backs. It doesn't matter to me whether you have 3 great running backs if you don't run the ball. And you can't sit there and say, "Guy, we're really tough on running backs, and we've been sending him to the NFL." That's great, no question about it. But you're the offense coordinator. You have to decide: are you going to run the ball, and how and when are you going to do it? It sounds to me like the transfers they brought in are showing something. I think you can make a pretty good evaluation on running backs by seeing what happens in scrimmages or 7-on-7. If they're pumping linebackers backwards and they're one jump cut and through, you probably have a really good running back regardless of what's happening, but you still have to be committed to running the ball.
Yeah, look, this is the big debate about Lincoln Riley this offseason is, does he really want a running game? Lincoln had some running games at Oklahoma, right? He had some teams that ran the football with strong backs and big offensive lines, and they bullied people. He did. Last year, he wasn't willing to do it, and the question is, was he not willing to do it because he didn't think he could run the ball with that group, that it wasn't physical enough? And so he would pick and choose his opportunities, and they get good yards in those opportunities, but he didn't trust it? Or is there something else going on? Lincoln Riley is not the pirate. He's not his mentor. This is not a guy who wants to throw the ball 80% of the time, but he certainly threw it a lot more last year than I'd like to see. And Greg's right. With running backs, is it nice to have a guy like Reggie who can turn a small crease into an 80-yard touchdown? It is. There are only so many of those guys out there. But if you give me a guy who's physical, has good balance and good vision, I'll take that, even if he's not going to go 80. Brian Jackson's probably not going to have a lot of 80-yard runs, right? I mean, that's not who he is. But he's going to be a 240-pound guy who I think has good vision, good balance, and good toughness. He's going to get you 7 on first down, and that'll work for me. Well, Culkin, any thoughts here on the running back crew, the running game?
Yeah, look, I'm just hoping that Lincoln Riley continues to follow through and back up his words. Going into last season, we finally have the mass that we need, the size we have up front that we want so we can run the ball. And they showed they were able to run the ball last year. It was a matter of consistency and not shooting yourself in the foot, stopping your own run game. So now you've got that same size, that same mass that he's been building up through recruiting and through the transfer portal. He's got the best running back room now he's had since he's been at USC. Maybe now the marriage will start pumping out some results. I don't know. I mean, you finally got your 1,000-yard rusher last year, and it felt like you actually left yards on the field that you could have gotten more. And we can cherry pick and go back to certain games. We go back to that Minnesota game where you've got the lead in the fourth quarter. Woody's already gone over 120 yards, 130 yards, whatever that number was. And for the final 10 minutes of the game, he doesn't touch the ball once. So it's that type of stuff that I think frustrates people. You're telling everybody what you want to do. You got to do it, right? If you're going to continue to recruit the mass and the size you need to compete, you've accomplished that. You keep you keep improving your running back room. Great, you've accomplished that now. Now let's run the ball more consistently. Let's use the run to set up your great passing game.
The beauty of it, Mark, is that in the end, and I know a lot of people think that I'm so negative towards some of the coaching situation, but Lincoln Riley is the offensive coordinator. You cannot sit there and say, we're not running the ball enough. We need to run the ball more. Well, you're calling the plays. You're calling the shots. So if the running game doesn't look like it's running very well, you got to take the responsibility from it. And the problem that we have is always when coaches make quotes that come back to bite them. And if it happens a couple of years in a row, there's a lot of credibility at stake. And it's important that if they're going to have Wayman Jordan running the ball, who's Studley, according to all reports, then they need to show it. There's no question that Lincoln Riley wants to pass the ball. There's no question he's been effective passing the ball. But there's also a lot of questions that if you don't have a running game and you don't use it or use it at the right moments, you got problems. And if you're in the Big Ten now, with a number of good, powerful teams, you're going to have a real, coming in fourth. I mean, this is how I feel. I think I can speak for most USC fans. Coming in fourth place is not an exciting idea. And I don't think that any SC fan thinks that coming in fourth. But it is going to be a challenge to be in that first 2 and 3. They can do it. I know that they can do it because the recruiting that I'm seeing right now is going to be, shall we say, a good beginning. But I'll end it with this. I don't care about getting 6'6", 320-pound linemen unless they're athletic. Everybody's got big linemen. Everybody. And you know what? It's how athletic they are. It's how they move. It's their footwork. It's all the fundamentals. And it's also about attitude, that I'm going to sit there and I'm going to kick somebody's ass in front of me. And if you don't have that attitude on every single play, you're going to have a problem.
I think with the running game stuff, Jaden's a big player in this too, right? Jaden Iamaleava, like the quarterback's got to be in sync with all of that. USC, I think they got like was like 30 positive rushing yards from the quarterback position last year. And that's not enough in Riley's offense. So again, if you're at, 200, 250, you don't need a 1,000-yard rusher from the quarterback position like he has gotten before, but you need a couple hundred yards to keep everybody honest, and then the running game can take off, with that part too. So that's going to be a key to watch. How comfortable is he making those reads and handing, keeping, all of that sort of stuff? That's a big part of the run game too.
If your quarterback is a threat to run, that's the equivalent of having an extra blocker on the offense, because it's going to keep somebody, usually that backside edge, where he is. And one of the big disappointments last year is when they made the switch to Jaden Iamaleava, and I thought, this is good. This guy can run. He's athletic. We saw him in very limited action have a couple of nice runs. I thought, good. Now we're going to have that extra blocker because he's going to be a threat to run. And then he didn't do it. And they have to fix that this year. They just have to fix that. You certainly can't run a read option look where your quarterback hands it off every time. That's insane. So that's something they have to fix. I expect they will, but I guess we'll see. But
how much of that? How much of that was the quarterback either not making the right read, or the quarterback saying, "You know what? I'm just not in the mood to run tonight."
I don't know, but I know this. Ultimately, it all comes back to Lincoln Riley, because if he has a quarterback that's not running when he should be, then it's his job to make him do it. And if you're Jaden Iamaleava, it makes no sense not to run. You're a big, strong kid. You're not, he's not Jalen Hurts, but he can move pretty well. He needs to be running. It's going to open up everything else for the offense. He has to do it. I'd be very surprised if they weren't more aggressive running with the quarterback this year. I'd be very surprised. With Miller was an okay enough athlete. He can move around in the pocket and avoid sacks pretty well. But you knew that Miller Moss was not a threat to actually run the ball. The guys they have on the roster this year, they have two of them that can run the ball. One of them better figure it out. That's all I'm saying. One of them better. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting. We have, of course, the high school recruiting that continues. Big weekends just about every weekend now with guys coming in. Another commitment we'll talk about in a second. And the transfer portal is opening up, and there's already chaos ensuing. Let's talk first about Vlad the Impaler from, I believe, Folsom High School, the big offensive tackle. Got a commitment from him. Not a surprise. I think everybody last week knew that we were going to get a commitment from him, but it came in. This is a big deal, isn't it? I mean, this is a California guy. He's a tackle, big kid, athletic. This is exactly what USC has to do, is keep those guys at home, right? Mark Hulkin, am I right?
You're always right, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Of course you're right. Look, one, you get a little bit of leverage. Hopefully he can, kind of pull on Ryder Lyon's cape a little bit, saying, hey, we've been doing this for 3-4 years in high school. Let's go finish the job up in college together. So you like that. But yeah, you're staying in state. You can look at the star ranking and say, well, he's only a 3-star. You look at the frame, you see 6'7". You see long arms, you see the shoulders, you see an offensive tackle ready to be developed. And you really like that when you can keep those guys in-house. To me, that wasn't even the biggest recruiting news. Getting him, it was because it was kind of anticlimactic. We all knew he was eventually coming. Having Tom shut it down, literally say, I'm done taking trips. I'm going to be a USC Trojan. I think that's the biggest recruiting news of last week.
Yeah, that's look, it's a big deal. You love to have these kids verbally commit, and it's not as exciting when they're running around the country, although sometimes that leads to interesting stories. I mean, the rumor about Xavier Griffin at Texas this past week, trying to take a photo with a Texas coach with a fight on sign, and them saying, no, you have to do hook 'em horns, and him refusing to do it. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. But I love it. I love the story, even if it's not true. That's why we're going to repeat it, even if it's made up. So yeah, Tom shutting it down. Now, we just got the news yesterday, I guess, that Bryce George, offensive tackle from Ferris State, Division II program, a really good Division II program, by the way. They win titles. 6'5", 315, All-American, two-time All-Conference pick. Apparently making a trip to USC. What do we make of this, guys? We talked a little bit about right tackle and left guard, but what do we make of Bryce George at least showing some interest in USC, which means USC showing some interest in him? Eric McKinney?
Yeah, I think there's spots on the offensive line. Certainly one, and it goes back to losing a couple guys that maybe you didn't expect that had a year or two in the system, right? Amos Talalele goes to Kansas State, and then Lolataga is in the portal and out too. And both those guys you expected, all right, steps forward, that's a tackle, that's a guard. And now when they go, you've got sort of this empty depth chart behind them, right? There's Micah Banuelos, I think, is a guy we didn't mention when we talked offensive line. Can he take a step forward? He's a guy that can play so far at USC. I think he's played all 5 spots when kind of working out there. But Bryce George, right, big, 6'5", 315, won, I don't know, 12 national championships at Ferris State at this point. Like he's played a lot of football, looks to be sort of that kind of versatile lineman that USC certainly really likes, guard, tackle, wherever, fit him in. And I think he's the kind of addition that USC would need now. Not a young guy that's going to get in the way of those 2 tackles that you just signed, because reports from them, that they kind of get it early on, and you want to sort of clear the runway for them to eventually play down the road. But we talked about, right, offensive line. Yeah, I think you need a body. I think you need 1 or 2 that can play, and that's sort of what the spring portal has come to be. And you don't want to say it's always this. The winter portal is always this. Spring portal is always this. But what it's sort of turned into is you go get your big name immediate starters in the winter, and then spring is where you add kind of depth pieces to shore up some of your spots. And now you're going to get a name or 2 that jumps in the spring. We've seen a 3-4 guys at this point. But I think he'd be a solid pickup. Now he's going to visit Cal. He's going to visit Iowa. Iowa's a spot where Midwest kid plays offensive line. That's certainly going to be an intriguing spot to end up. But I think it says something. He went in, I think 3 days ago, got his trip set up really quickly. Like USC was ready to go on an offensive lineman that went in, and they liked enough. So it's always interesting when a visit gets set up pretty quickly. So he'll be a guy to watch.
All right, Mark Holken, I want your prediction. If he ends up at USC, and we obviously don't know if that's going to happen, what do you think is the plan for him? Starting right tackle, starting left guard, backup at both spots? What do you think?
So I've watched this film. I wanted to see what this guy was all about because, Eric said he's won multiple national championships. He's a multi-year All-American, multi-all-conference player. He's a late bloomer. When he left high school, he wasn't even an offensive lineman. He played defensive line and tight end. So he's obviously he knows how to play the game. He's a quick learner. But when I watch this film, I swear to God, he reminds me of Cortland Ford. He's got that tweener body. He wants.
So is he going to Kentucky? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, he looks like a guard who can play tackle. I think is what I'm trying to convey here. So he could be that versatile guy, that swing guy. Can he play inside? We know he can play left tackle. Can he play in the interior offensive line? He's proven that he can switch from one side of the ball to the other and become pretty good. So now is the next step, proving that you can play left guard as opposed to left tackle, because that's what he's known at Ferris State.
Yeah, and they're not bringing him in to unseat Elijah Page. I think we all know that. Greg, what are your thoughts on this guy? Is this the sort of person that USC should be looking at right now? Does it make sense to you?
Well, I give them credit. They're trying to uncover as many options as they have or can have. we've seen a lot of guys come into USC in recent times that, are intriguing, and we're hoping that, we find the hidden star in the big university of talent. So they have nothing to lose by checking this guy out. If he goes to Iowa, okay, he goes to Iowa. But really, excuse me, he's worth looking into, finding out the culture of who he's all about. I always have liked defensive linemen that turn into offensive linemen. There's a mentality there. I always look when a player signs, just to reassure myself when they play both ways. I think it's a big help if you're going to be an offensive lineman, because you know what the defensive line wants to do. You know what you were playing defensive line. You know what you don't like offensive linemen to do. So the fact that this guy started off on defense and he's on offense, no problem. And I think SC's had a lot of players that have played at one time both ways. I mean, even Ron Yeri played both ways back in the heyday of the McKay years. I think Brad Buddy played both ways when he was at Kansas City Rockhurst at one point, and then he came here and he did, it wasn't a problem. So I think until you see the guy actually scrimmage to see what he actually does in a practice, you're hoping on good faith that if you're a second team All America, Division II or whatever, that there's something there that hasn't been challenged. And if he's challenged and he's able to move bodies around and do the things that SC fans want to see, then it's a good move. So bring him on, see what you do. If you like him, fine. If he comes in and he's a support player, they need support players. I mean, we know that. Okay, so there's really a no-lose situation with him.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a guy who's willing to come in and play a few snaps at guard, play a few snaps at tackle. I don't know anything about him other than what we've read on the internet in the last day and seen on film. I'll tell you what I do like. This is a guy who comes from a very successful program, who has taken a lot of snaps. And so this is a guy you would expect will come in and behave like a professional. When Gavin Meyer came in last year, I think we all looked at it and said, this guy? I mean, he wasn't even a full-time starter at Wyoming. Why are they bringing in a guy like this? And the truth is, Gavin played pretty well. But the other thing that he did is he approached his job like a professional. And from day one, the coaches were talking about that. I'd be stunned if this kid shows up, if he makes the jump to the biggest time college football division there is for 1 year. I'd be stunned if he didn't come in and show everybody how to work and how to be a professional and set a great example. It's good to have guys like that. It's good to have guys from programs that have been successful and bring a little piece of that culture. I don't care if it's Division II. If you're in a Division II program that consistently wins the conference and wins national titles, that means they have a culture that has something right about it. So it seems like the right sort of guy to bring in from my perspective. And I know there's some fans who say, "Hey, he's coming from a school I've never heard of, Ferris State." That's fine, but the NFL is full of guys from Division II and other levels that were late bloomers and can play. So we'll see.
He's not going to break USC's NIL bank either. He's not that type of player.
Agreed.
One of the things for me with the offensive line, and Mark mentioned it when we talked earlier about that group where you're talking about who's 6, who's 7, who's 8. USC had better wrap its head around you are going deeper in the offensive line depth chart this season. USC got unbelievable injury luck. And I know, right, Elijah Page gets hurt in the bowl game. And so the most recent thing is they had to go to the bench for a bunch of backups in the most recent game they played. But all season, they got to roll pretty much their starting lineup out for every single game. And that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, and it definitely doesn't happen in back-to-back years. So again, you'd better be really, really confident at all of your backup spots. I mean, just looking at snaps, right? They're starting 5 offensive linemen, took the 5 most snaps, which is with the quarterback change, like you would expect that. But 6 was Tobias Raymond, who's down there below Quentin Joyner, below Walker Lyons in terms of snaps taken last year. So they did not have to go, they did not have to go to the bench, which again, some of these teams are playing like 9, 10 offensive linemen up in their like top 15, top 20 snaps. So that's something too, where they got you didn't have to talk a whole lot about what the depth was last year. I think that's going to be just statistics and numbers and whatever. Like, I don't know if you're going to get that injury luck again.
Those
Well,
numbers, those numbers are going to flip this year because based on the schedule, last year you had Utah State as one of your out of conference games, but you had LSU and Notre Dame. So you're opening the season with, Missouri State and Georgia Southern. I would anticipate the backups, the number 6, 7, and 8, getting more snap opportunities.
I mean, you got a ton against Rutgers and you got a bunch against Utah State. So you had 2 last year, but you're right. I mean, the opener when you would typically expect your backups to play the second half, you didn't get that last year. But I just mean in terms of guys leaving, right? I mean, they basically had one game where you pulled a guy, but very few where an offensive lineman goes hobbling off even for a quarter or let alone multiple games.
Yeah, you're not likely to get lucky that way again. And you don't need 10, but you need at least 8. You need 8 guys you can trust. Last year they didn't have 5. That's the truth. Last year they didn't have 5 guys they could trust. So especially early in the year, before Elijah Pace started to develop, you had maybe 3 or 2. You really had 2 guys you felt good about. So I think they have more than that this year. I think they'll probably have 6 or 7 they feel good about. You need 8, and maybe this guy gets you there. I don't know. All right. So what are the other spots that we think they're likely to make a move at in the transfer portal? I know Lincoln Riley said there are a couple of places they're going to look around. They probably won't be that active. But I suspect all of us can name at least one spot.
Linebacker, I'm going first so nobody takes it. Linebacker.
Linebacker, of course. Of course.
Right, you guys discuss all the other ones. That's my answer.
Well, let's discuss that one first because we know the coaches are really excited about the top 2 guys. They're really excited about them. And I think that makes sense. That jump from freshman to sophomore year should be a big one. And Eric Gentry, slightly bulked up Eric Gentry. Eric Gentry is going to make plays as long as he's out on the field. He's going to make a lot of plays, especially behind a bigger and better defensive line. I absolutely trust Eric Gentry to be one of the best players on the field every Saturday. We just don't know how many Saturdays that's going to be. I'll be stunned if it's 12. If it's 9, 10, and the games he's missing are not Notre Dame, Michigan, then I'll feel pretty good about it. But we don't know. So they're going to have to do that.
Will you be okay?
Are they looking for a starter or are they looking for a backup? What are they looking for?
Will you be okay with 11 Saturdays and 1 Friday?
I would be okay with 11 Saturdays and 1 Friday. Frankly, I'd be okay with about 7 Saturdays if I could pick the 7. If he's not there for Purdue, I'm not going to be that worried. If he's not there for Oregon or Michigan, I'm going to be upset. Let's put it that way. What do you think they're looking for? Are they looking for a starter? Are they looking for a guy who can be that third linebacker starter when they're in the three linebacker sets? Are they looking for a younger guy who's going to be able to provide depth? What do they want?
I think they're looking for the best player that they can get. It may not be if you've got a full room of great players, you may say, well, we don't need another great player. We have enough great players, but everybody's going to say linebacker, which is understandable because of the quantity of it. So that's understandable. If they're looking for another offensive lineman, that's certainly understandable. No problem there. If they're looking for a wide receiver, in my opinion, that wouldn't be a bad look either, because they're not exactly with the departures of the other stars to other universities. So it really depends on who's available and do they want to take one of those spot scholarships. I hope that whoever they get is a frontline player that, it's kind of an insult, honestly, to say you could come in and be our backup. that's like saying let's play and hope we get in fourth place. You know, everyone wants to win the league, so go out and get the best player no matter what, and we'll see how it works out.
Well, if you go out and get a guy who just finished his freshman year somewhere, you're probably not bringing him in to start this year, but he has some runway. If you go out and get a guy who has 1 year left, that's a different story. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Prediction time. I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna ask you whether USC is gonna pick up a guy at that position in the transfer portal this spring, and if so, whether they're going to go with a young guy or whether they're going to go with a guy they expect to plug in and play right now. Okay, that's the game. Let's start with wide receiver. Are they going to bring in a wide receiver? And if so, is it going to be a young guy or is it going to be an older guy who's going to expect to play right now? Eric McKinney.
I think you can go get an older slot guy. I think.
You can, I know.
I think that's it. I think that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Right. Makai's going to play a ton for you. A ton. The other options in the slot are they get to true freshmen pretty quickly. So I think there's a spot there for somebody.
Older slot guy, he says. Mark Holken.
Yeah, I think wide receiver is probably fourth on the list of positions they need to attack. So if they go get someone, maybe a younger guy. I mean, I don't know why Eric's so down on DJ Jordan, but that's another slot guy they have on the roster right now.
I think he's an outside guy. I think you've got Fair, and I think you've got Makai. And then
got Eli Sanders you can slide in there as well.
Sure, but
I don't. I mean, he certainly can move, but is this a guy that can run routes and catch? I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust him for the whole route tree and for the whole offensive receiver.
Okay. Well,
Great Cats. Wide receiver, yes or no? And are they going to bring in a younger guy or an older guy?
Yes, older guy, because they want to win this year. They've got to make a big turnaround this year to sustain this recruiting class. If it all stays in shape, they've got to have another one that's in the top 5, in the top 10 at least. And the best way to do that is by winning. And you're going to get the best players that are going to help you win this season because you need that. And if they don't get it, you'll see the results of that.
I think they already got the older guy when they brought Prince Strawn in.
I think he's an outside guy, but I think you're right. I think no on this. I mean, they may bring somebody in. If they bring somebody in, it's a depth piece. I think if you're looking for a number 4 receiver, the freshman they have, you're going to find a number 4 receiver in that group. It's not hard to play as a freshman, especially if you don't have that much weight on you at wide receiver. And the one thing they can't afford to do is lose one of the top 2 guys, but you're not going to find a replacement for one of those top 2 guys in the spring portal anyway. That just can't happen. Okay, let's go with defensive back. No, forget defensive back. Corner / nickel. Because they're not going to bring, I don't think they're going to bring in a safety at this point. They don't need to. Corner nickel. Are they going to bring in a guy? If so, young guy, old guy. Greg Katz.
Well, I think they have a lot right now to choose from. So I say if they're going to bring in somebody, I would probably think they're going to bring in an older guy. If the guy's been productive or he's been before, because I just go back to the same theme. They need to win this coming year. And they can't afford to sit there and say, well, we'll work him in. They need at this point to got to win now.
They do have to win now, no question about it. Mark Holken, are they bringing in a corner or a nickel? If so, old guy, young guy.
Old guy. You got the young dudes. You don't need any more of those. I mean, there's a good chance that Marcellus and Braylon Conley are starting cornerbacks.
I think they might be. And you're not going to find a guy in the transfer portal, a young guy who's probably better than them anyway, right? I mean, you're probably not going to do that.
They're looking for somebody experienced that, heaven forbid, injuries just ravage the group. You've got somebody who's got a little bit of maturity who can possibly just step in and not be overwhelmed by the situation.
Eric McKinney.
Yeah, I want Greedy Vance.
Young or old. If they bring in a corner, he's going to be an older guy, right? Are they going to do it?
I think a nickel. I want Greedy Vance. I want another year of Greedy Vance. Whoever that is, his exact guy, bring him in. I think you do have options there, and I think you can do some different things. But if they think that that's DJ Harvey, if they think they got him already, then okay. But if he's playing outside corner and trying to do some other things, I would go get someone where they say this is our day one answer at nickel. And again, we saw with Greedy, right? He came off the field sometimes. Sometimes you threw that third linebacker out there. Sometimes you played with three safeties. Sometimes you did that. But if you get into some pass heavy situations, someone who is like truly at home at nickel, I think would be a really good addition. And it's got to be a 1 year guy because the numbers, right, are going to dictate, like, they're not going to keep every single one of these defensive backs that they signed in this class. That's just, it's college football right now, right? You don't get to do that anymore. But I don't want any other hurdles put in the way because I want to keep as many of those guys as possible. I think they signed an unbelievable defensive back class in 2025. So 1 year guy, play now, then go, then turn it over to them.
Yeah, I'm okay with a 1 year guy who's a nickel, I suppose. I'm also okay with them not doing it. I think I'm playing Kamari Ramsey at nickel quite a bit this year if I'm them.
So the three safeties, Christian Pierce, Bishop Fitzgerald, Kamari Ramsey, that's probably my starting lineup. Kamari, you get him closer to the line of scrimmage. I'm comfortable with him covering. You have him and Eric Gentry on the field at the same time as two guys who could literally be playing 6 different positions on any snap, and you can get pretty creative with that look.
Yeah, and I think that Conley and Williams are probably going to be ready to play this year. Those are talented guys. They were excited about them last year. They've had another year experience. I don't think. Yes, you could find corners that are out there in college football who are more experienced and just as talented, but I don't think many of those guys are going to be in the spring portal. So I don't think you're going to find somebody better than those guys. So I'm saying no on that too. Okay, let's go to. We did offensive line. We did corner. Is there another spot where we think they're likely to look at somebody from the transfer portal? Who has another spot that they say yes?
Said linebacker. Eric already took linebacker off the board and wide receiver.
Linebacker we're good at. We know they're looking at an offensive lineman. We talked about defensive back. Is there any other spot on the roster? I guess we talked about wide receiver. We talked about wide receiver. Yeah.
I think by this point in spring ball, since we have one more week left, they pretty much know what they have. They pretty much know who can play and who's got, should we say, needs.
Yeah.
They need more reps. So I would think that they're pretty locked into where they are. I don't expect anything to do. I think what they want to make sure is keep this recruiting class together. Don't sit there and get caught in saying one thing and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they pick up a player here or there. That might not go over so well. And I think that this recruiting class is incredibly important to stay together.
Agreed. Talk about something that wouldn't go over very well. There were rumors, no doubt started by his own people, that Tennessee starting quarterback, Nico, used to be starting quarterback, Iamaleava or something like that. I should have it up on the screen so I can read it. That he was interested in USC and Ohio State and Oregon, and there's mutual interest. I think that's not true about any of those schools. Let's do, each of you get 30 seconds to talk about Nico and the impact of this sort of thing on college football. Get 30 seconds, that's it. I don't care what you say. Greg Katz, you're ready to go. I can see it in your face. Do it.
Don't take him. The guy's he's gonna be perhaps the poster boy of why they need to have a governing body of college football, because to think as a college student, some guy says, I'm worth $4 million for playing college football is an absolute ridiculous thing unless someone's stupid enough to pay him. I don't think he stands a ice cube chance in hell of being at USC, and I hope he isn't.
Good 30 seconds. Mark Culkin, what do you got?
I'm glad it happened. I'm sorry that it's happening to Nico Iamaleava, but this is the college football needed a reset. And this is a perfect opportunity to make an example of, hey, look, the tail can't wag the dog anymore. And we're going to take a starting quarterback from the SEC and we're going to make an example out of him. If he was worth $4 million, there would be a program out there waiting for him. There's no program out there waiting for him anymore. This was the perfect opportunity for everybody to say, you know what, we're colluding. We're going to set the bar. This can't happen anymore. I'm happy. I'm glad it happened.
Eric McKinney?
Look, if he won the national championship for Tennessee, he's worth more than $4 million. That's true. But there's no guarantee, right? And you can't do that. This is the single biggest fumble that I can think of in terms of how you handle the situation that you had. You were going to make, right, reportedly 2.7 million this year, and you were going to be the quarterback of a Tennessee offense that's good, right? That's going to let you throw the ball and let you do a bunch of stuff. And now you are seemingly hoping that UCLA doesn't lose interest. And that fall down. And I think the way it was handled and the way the representatives attacked the stories that came out, and for school, because I think that if it was just handled, hey, he's going into the portal, there's no beef, we're not upset, we're not whatever, people would have jumped all over him. I mean, all over him. But quitting 2 days before the spring game, having again your family members, representatives go all out attack on something that they knew was going to be public in like 10 hours. And you just saw these programs that I still think absolutely would have taken a swing on him if he had just gone in the portal and said, hey, I'm looking for another opportunity. And to have all of them just nope, 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 nope. It is, again, to go from where you were a couple weeks ago to now, it's one of the biggest like fumbles in terms of setting up your future that I can remember over, right? So if the numbers are all true, $1.3 million, which how quickly do you make that up? Again, if you're really, really good for Tennessee this year, that's not a tough number to chase in terms of real deals and that sort of thing.
This is not a kid who played particularly well last year either. This is not Peyton Manning coming back for one more year at Tennessee. He's not that level of player, certainly not yet. And you also have the additional rumor that he threatened to sit out the playoff game unless he got a deal. This is a guy who has stepped on the stage, asked everybody to shine the spotlight on him, and lit himself on fire in front of everybody. And the people that are giving this kid advice are morons. They're absolute morons, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm with Mark. It's probably the best thing that could have happened to almost every major program in college football, because now they have a story to tell all of their own players. Guys, be very, very careful, because you can blow up your entire career. And it's not just his college career. It's not just a guy that now is hoping to hold on at UCLA so he can win 3 games next year. It's a guy who has the talent to be an NFL quarterback, and there's not a single NFL GM right now that looks at him and says, yeah, that guy could be the leader of our franchise. Not a one. Not a one. It's shockingly stupid. And I say the people who are giving him advice, they are morons. But let's be honest. He's old enough to know better himself.
Thank you.
He's an adult. Make your own decisions, and don't make decisions that involve stabbing your teammates in the back, making a fool of yourself, and blowing up your career over something that makes no sense. I'm stunned he did it. Frankly, I'm happy he did it. He'll learn from it too. And I don't much care if he makes a lot of money as a football player or not. He'll learn from this and become a better person. Maybe he'll actually learn who not to listen to.
The best thing you can do, Chris, is to literally subjugate his ego, put his aside, come back to California, go to one of those lower programs, go to a
UCLA. We just talked about it.
Yeah.
How much lower can it get than that?
Go to San Jose State, go to a Fresno State, a
Hey,
Sacramento.
the Ferris State quarterback just left. They got a spot at Ferris State.
I
But
would love for him to end up in Ferris State.
image rehabilitation will do him good, and it'll show some leadership qualities that the NFL GMs will say, you know what? He's learning from his mistake. He's going to sacrifice some money. He's going to go work on his game. He might even help recruit some players that, might not be good enough for a USC, but now they can go play with somebody who's a quarterback who is good enough to be at USC, but he's still maturing.
Look, I think that's all true, and I think if you want the kid to show some humility and do something to show that he's humbled, putting on the powder blue is about the best thing I can think of. I mean, how much more humbling can you get?
Yeah, but this is the same family whose younger brother left UCLA at the altar right before signing day to go to Arkansas. I mean, do you really want to deal with that family?
No.
But UCLA could take a big swing, right? You go get Nico, you go get Jade Knott. I'm curious, what does Nico do to the locker room where he lands? And how much trust can he sort of develop with his teammates? Where is it out of the realm of possibility that after his first big win in the fall, he turns and goes, okay, I'm not coming to practice unless my NIL deal gets refigured, right? I mean, that has to be on the table now when you're talking about potential moves from him.
It's hard to imagine him pulling that stunt after this, but you never do know. I'll say this: it's hard to imagine a guy with this decision making and apparently this character being the leader of your football program. And if I were Deshaun Foster, I might look at my team and say, man, I could use an upgrade in talent at quarterback, but I don't know that I want that guy to be the leader of my football program.
And I tell you what, you have to always remember, this kid's from Southern California. He's been a name for 3 years in high school, maybe 4. The players on the team, they especially in this day and age where there's so many 7-on-7 national tournaments and combines, they know the personality of these players. They know what he's all about. He probably thinks he's, another, I think you mentioned it, a Manning or whatever. He's not. And the bottom line is it gets down to, do I really want to play on the same team as him? Do I want to put my advantage there? The argument, of course, is, well, UCLA is a great academic school, but you're not generally there because it's a great academic school. You probably like UCLA or your family likes it, but do you want to be stuck in the same boat as this guy? And if things go bad, or you can sit there and say, I knew it. And that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, he's blown himself up publicly, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do hope that other players learn from this. This is a good teaching moment for a lot of guys, and the Bear Alexanders of the world have gotten away with this sort of behavior up to this point, but now to have such a high-profile guy do this to his career, I think maybe it will change some minds. Maybe it'll educate some people. All right, let's close with this. I want to read you some quotes from USC General Manager Chad Bowden. This came from his interview with Kyle Matthews this past week. At least I saw it this past week. I assume that's when it went up. But he said similar things to other people. So I'm going to lay this out here and we're going to talk about it. You ready? This is Chad Bowden, USC's General Manager. This team is just as talented as any team in the country. Any team that I saw in the Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, or National Championship playoff. And you're like, oh man, it's right there. Kyle Matthews says there are NFL bodies at every position. Chad Bowden, that's right. Kyle Matthews, the talent is there. Bowden, that's right. Guys, that is USC's general manager. This is somebody who should know this roster. It's also somebody that shouldn't be unnecessarily raising expectations, being that he wasn't around for what came before. There's no reason for him to put that weight on his shoulders, but he just did it. What do we make of these comments?
Win today, because there's no tomorrow. I mean, I read those quotes that you sent us, Chris, and I haven't watched the interview yet, but just reading the words, Chad Bowden has left Lincoln Riley with no other alternative. That you got what you need, get it done. That was the end. You got what you need. There's no more excuses.
He didn't say we're building. He didn't say, look, we're putting together a great recruiting class. We're on our way and we're close. That's not what he said.
No.
Right now, USC is as talented as any college football team in the country. That is the position of the number one or number two guy in the football program. That's his position. By the way,
I mean, they're not. They're not. They're not. But you don't need to be as talented. You don't need to be the most talented team to win a whole lot of games and to go pretty far in the playoff, right? Like they play. He was at Notre Dame. USC last year played with Notre Dame. They played with Penn State. Like they played with teams that went deep into the playoffs. So it's matchups, it's that kind of thing. If you look at sort of player for player, you're going to take other rosters. But I have no doubt that Chad Bowden looks at this team and goes, "Yeah, there's wins here. We absolutely can pile up wins. And if we get into a game with a team that whatever on paper is better or somewhere in the playoff or in the championship game, conference championship game type atmosphere, this team will show up and they can play with them." And I do agree with him on that. But no, I mean, when you look at NFL guys and the top of the depth charts and things like that, there's a ton of question marks at USC. A ton of question marks. And it's all based on, we've seen flashes from this guy. Can he take the next step? Can he take the next step? But right now, if you're looking at, the NFL draft 2026, I don't think it's as shallow as USC's class this year, where you're talking about, do they have a third round pick? Do they have a fourth round pick based on sort of how teams judge Jonah? But nobody's starting this season when you look at like 26 mock drafts and when you look at top 10 players at each position returning, it's not dotted with USC guys the way it has been in the past.
Eric, what is he doing? Why is he making such a bold claim, raising expectations with the fan base for a team that was 7-6 last year? And
I think they can win. I think they can win. And I think he's been positive about everything.
Win what? What do you think Chad Bowden thinks his team is capable of doing?
Yeah, he says championships. He says championships. He's positive about all of it.
Greg Katz, tell me your take on this. I've got some idea what's coming, but let's hear it.
Coming in out of the bullpen, honestly, if they were as talented as they say they are, or were, or will be, you'd see it in the NFL draft. You'd see people lining up. The truth of the matter is, coaching has a lot to do with it as well. It's a tough deal when you have a turnaround coaching staff, let's say on defense, and all of a sudden they're bringing in players left and right that you've heard of, that have been recruited by big schools. So there's the coaching difference. You might see a little bit on the offensive line, I think, that we'll see a difference there. But it really, to me, when I read those quotes, I go, what a challenging comment directed at Lincoln Riley. Now, they can say all they want, that they get along and they're on the same track, the same boat. But when you say at every position they're really good, really? I think they've been to the happy hour bar a little bit too much to make those comments. And I think if they really believe those comments, they needed to be shaded in a different presentation. I mean, I give Bowden all the credit in the world for being positive. It seems to me like he's made some inroads in recruiting, but really, what is he and what does he do? And what is, the athletic director really think? Is she on board with this guy to the point where she says, say what you think, say what you want? And that would lead me to wonder, what's the relationship between the athletic director and the head football coach? I hope it's good. Maybe it is. Maybe it's great. But I will say this. The quotes were a nice quote if you're selling season tickets. The real comment will be how they actually play. I've been saying this since I returned to the show, what that scoreboard reads after every game. And I'm going to tell you, it isn't going to be what I see in the first two games, maybe not even the third game. But when the competition gets tougher, we'll see about this great talent that SC has. I've been around the Pete Carroll era. I've been around the John Robinson era. I definitely was around the John McKay era. I know what a national championship roster
I
looks
thought you were going to go Howard Jones too.
well, I was going to go back to Jesus, but I don't know whether he was in charge of it in that portion of football. But the reality is, I think most of us who have had a chance to, even if you only went through the Pete Carroll era, you got a close enough look to what a national championship roster looks like. National championship coaches in Carroll's early phases of his tenure, and you know. And so I say to you, do you see the same thing right now at USC, where all of a sudden, as an example, McKay was what 6-4-1 for 1970 and 1971, and all of a sudden 1972, they're being hailed as one of the greatest teams of all time. You know, that happens. How did it happen? Well, they had talent. You saw that in the draft. Okay. You go to Robinson. Who did he have? Marcus Allen, Ronnie Lott. I mean, we're talking about superstar players. Some of those teams may have been even better than McKay's teams. But then you saw Carroll's teams, and when Carroll had it all together and was, with all due respect, I think he's a great coach, but he wasn't the same coach to me after the early part of his thing. He got, for whatever reason, some of his best coaches left on their own or were phased out, whatever it was. I think we all know what it should look like, and I don't think they're there yet. I think that would be a complete fib, but they're working on it, and they deserve credit for their working on it, and hopefully it all turns out well for them.
So here's my take on the whole thing. There are no teams that look like Pete Carroll's teams in college football now. Those teams don't exist. You saw the national championship playoff. You name one team in that playoff that could have played with Pete's teams in 2004 or 2008. Name one. Those teams don't exist anymore. And the reality is USC probably is as talented as Notre Dame, which made it the national title game. They were up 14 on Penn State, and they were able to play with them.
So let me ask you a question, because you brought it up, and I appreciate the comment. Was it the team or was it the coaching, in your opinion, that created the negative situations in the end?
It was last year.
Yes,
It's both. It's both. I think USC had three real problems. One is they didn't have frontline talent up front defensively, especially once Anthony Lucas went down. Anthony Lucas is an NFL player. When he went down, they're playing a lot of journeymen and kids. They played hard and they played pretty well considering their talent level, but they did not have the horses up front defensively. Offensively, they didn't either, especially a tackle where they were playing a guy who's not a tackle and a kid who wasn't ready. As the year went on, he got much, much better. This year, I think we're going to see a completely different Elijah Page. But if you are questionable on the offensive line, questionable on the defensive line, and questionable with your quarterback decision-making, you're going to have some issues with your final win-loss record. It's also a team, as Chad Bowden put it, that could have won 11 games. They could have also won 5. But so I think the difference between last year's team and this year's team is that you have substantially better talent defensively up front, like substantially better. And there is nothing more important for a defense than that. Nothing. You can talk to me all you want about corners. A corner is as good as that defensive line is going to be. You ask anybody to cover for 6 seconds, somebody's going to get open. USC is going to be dramatically better defensively this year. Second year in the system, fantastic coaching staff, and so much better up front. USC is going to be one of the top defensive teams in the Big Ten. Offensively, I don't know. There's still questions on the offensive line. I still have major questions about quarterback. We'll see. But if they have grown up on the offensive line so that they are good, they're not going to be great, but if they're good up front And if Jaden Iamaleava takes big strides, USC should win 10 games and be in the playoff. That's the reality. They have that level of talent right now. If they struggle on the offensive line, if they have some injuries, if Jaden Iamaleava continues to make bad decisions in key moments, then it's an 8 or 9 win team. But I think that's the reality. What's interesting about this is Chad Bowden's putting all kinds of pressure on Lincoln Riley, on the program, on himself, that he doesn't have to. So I don't think this is just about selling season tickets. I think the fan base is already excited about the direction of the program in light of the recruiting, in light of the people that they now have running the operation, in light of the defensive staff. So I don't know that he had to do that. I think he's saying what he believes, and I think he's basing it off of his comparison of what he saw on the practice field in South Bend and what he sees on the practice field at USC. And he's saying if Notre Dame is a team that can make the national title game, this USC team has the same talent, at least, that Notre Dame had. And I think that's true.
I think that's fair. I mean, Notre Dame, nobody would have said at the beginning of the year, oh, this is the most talented roster in the country. And I think that's where you are at USC. But you can win games without being the more talented team, right? There's at least a handful of rosters where every single thing being equal, you'd go, I'll take that situation over what USC has. But not 15, not 20. I mean, they've put it together at some key spots at this point.
I think it's probably closer to 5, right? And two of them are in the Big Ten. Maybe Penn State, but probably not. I don't think Penn State is dramatically more talented than USC. And when you're talking about questionable coaching, they still have questionable coaching on their sideline. So
it's the weight of the starting quarterback position. That's one guy. But the percentage of how much that matters it's not 1%. It's huge. And so that's where, is Jaden that guy this year? And if he is, boy, the pieces around there looks good. Looks good enough.
With Caleb Williams, USC would be one of the favorites to make the championship game this year. Now, that I know that's an outlier because he was so talented. But that is the primary difference in USC and teams that you expect will be there. If USC has a quarterback that plays like Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks traditionally play, USC is going to win a ton of games this year, and they will be a problem for Michigan and for Notre Dame and for Oregon. That's the reality. If Jaden Iamaleava makes that jump, if he doesn't make that jump, Lincoln Riley puts so much pressure on his quarterback. If he doesn't make that jump, they're going to go 9-3 or 8-4, despite the fact that they're going to play really good defense.
He doesn't.
I think that's it.
I don't know how big of a jump you're looking for Jaden Iamaleava to make, but Notre Dame got to the national championship game last year based on 2 things: their defense and their ability to run the ball incredibly well.
Right.
Do we agree that Jaden Iamaleava is probably a better quarterback than Riley Leonard, just without the game experience?
I mean, I don't know if you're
to the level of
Riley, heck of a running quarterback. That guy made a lot of plays.
If he plays to that level of Riley Leonard, which is barely a 200-yard game, throwing the ball 200 yards a game was a luxury for Notre Dame. So if you get that type of quarterback production, I can see where Chad Bowden's coming from, because he's trying. I think he's modeling this team off of what Notre Dame did: strong defensively, be just good enough on offense. And when you've got Lincoln Riley, you're going to be better than just good enough on offense.
I don't know that Jaden Iamaleava is going to have a lot of 100-yard rushing games, and Riley Leonard was doing that a lot. But I do agree with you that Notre Dame made their living playing good defense and running the football, and we should be honest, a schedule that was pretty questionable. USC schedule this year is easier than last year, but a road game at an Illinois team that's pretty good, and then the 3 other teams I mentioned, that's 4 games that are, you have to win all the others and split those 4 to get in the playoffs, right? That's where they are. That's doable. Can they beat Michigan at the Coliseum? Of course they can. USC has more talent than Michigan, and they're playing at home. They should win that game. Are they going to win on the road at South Bend? Maybe. They have a shot, but that's a tough place to play. They're going to win at Oregon, tough place to play. But you win the game at Illinois, and you beat Michigan at home, and you don't fumble the ball away against those other teams. Can you go 10-2? Of course they can. They have enough talent to do that. And Lincoln Riley should be accountable for that. If Lincoln Riley wins 8 games with this roster, he did a bad job coaching. That's the truth. And I think Chad Bowden's comments leave it where there's no doubt about that. Right? I mean, Chad Bowden is saying this is a team that is very, very close. There are NFL players on this roster. We should win today. If they don't win today, people are going to hang those comments around Lincoln Riley's neck come December. I'm okay with that.
I agree with you. It all gets back to the head coach. No matter how you slice it, this is what his 4th season, and recruiting errors they made or misjudgments or whatever the case may be, it all shows up eventually. And this is like a crossroads year for him, in my opinion.
It's huge. This is the year that decides whether or not Lincoln Riley is one of the top coaches in the country or whether he's a pretender. This is the year that decides that.
Yep.
I think he's going to be all right because I still think Lincoln Riley can coach offense, and I think he's going to have the best defense he's ever had. But he's got to prove it.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, any final thoughts?
What are we going to do after next week? Are we going to see some fireworks? Excuse me, within the program?
These days, you never know. I mean, if Tennessee starting quarterback can walk out in the middle of spring ball, you never really know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm not even going to speak it into existence, but who knows what sort of guys may decide they want to pay raise at USC and all kinds of other places.
A lot going to happen off the
I'm
field.
going to make a prediction. I think all of Oregon starters will jump into the transfer portal. That's my prediction. I will speak that into existence. All right, guys, any other thoughts before we sign off?
That's all she wrote.
Good. All right, well, thanks for joining us this week. Next week, we're going to have plenty of recruiting and transfer portal stuff to talk about, and we'll see where that leads us. Until then, fight on, everybody.
Fight on.